Welcome to Mythical Phylogeny Adventurers. I'm your guide, Jason. When it comes to fantasy, there are many things which have been debated. The ethics of charm spells and necromancy. The potential relationships between various races. But one that does come up a lot is the efficiency of boob plate armor. I'll cover the bikini armor at a later point. Raise your hand if you have done it, or leaving a comment might work better. But anyways, you're playing a video game, and you bring down a powerful boss, who drops a new piece of chest armor. Your old one is way too undergeared for the area. You probably picked it up about 10 levels ago, and just haven't found anything until now. And you check out the armor. Great stats, except it's ugly. Well, you chuck it in your inventory and keep going. I know I have done that. Unless I am playing some ultra hard game where every stat point matters, I will often go for aesthetics over function. Now if it's both, I'll throw it on right away. Now, we all know that aesthetics is important. Just look at the loads and loads of cosmetic upgrades in many games. People spend real world money to get new character skins. How your character looks is important. It makes your character yours. And with it comes some rather outrageous designs for fantasy armor and weapons, like maces so massive that there is no way to even lift them, or shoulder plates that stick up like turrets beside your head, or giant armor spikes. Okay, that one does actually make a lot of sense. But one does seem to come up often, and that is boob plate armor. You have a female character who has plate armor that has boobs on it. Is this the sexualization of female characters, or is it practical? Let's see if we can figure this out. Don't have a drinking game for every time I say boob here. And to answer this, we need to look at how armor really works. I've mentioned this before, but I actually had the chance to work with groups like the American Jousting League thanks to my job. And I got to learn the proper way to wear armor. And like a nice suit, you need your armor to fit right, so it doesn't get you hurt. And the first thing to remember is that the breastplate doesn't sit directly on the chest. There is a layer of padding, linen usually, particularly around the areas where the pressure was transferred. Now, who here has been properly fitted for your hiking backpack? There, the weight is meant to go through your waist, and a little through the area over your trapezius and clavicle, but that's more for stabilization. And guess what? That is about the same places you want properly fitted medieval armor to rest. It does not rest directly on your chest, and there is a reason. When you are struck, it will have a bit more give that way, and the padding will help disperse the force, reducing the risk of injury. Now, this means that it'll need to be a little tighter by the waist, so it doesn't slide down, which is where you want most of the weight and force to go. This will result in a more narrow waist. If you look at much medieval armor, you'll notice that. But also a bulge over the chest and belly. This creates a gap over the chest. Generally, this is about 3 inches. The first kind of boob plate is the monoboob, which has a bulge over the chest area. And this does make perfect sense. This provides the necessary space to fit a woman's figure. If she is better endowed in the chest, you could increase the size of the gap. You don't want it too tight. Else, you still get some of the force transferring over, and with it, some risk of injury. From there, we also have those designed with boobs into the metal. And there are 2 options here. The first is by far the easiest. A great example of this is from the manga and anime Overlord. There is a female character named Gagaran. As you can see, she's a muscular warrior in plate. And judging by the design, it looks like we have the simple metal bulges attached to her armor. This creates the illusion of boobs on her armor. But the second one is shaping the metal. And there's a couple of arguments people have made against them. The dumbest being, it will be too difficult to make. And that's a pretty bad one. Tell me, have you followed fashion trends much? Me? Not really, but history did. And it's even infected armor. There are plenty of different styles found throughout history, and Henry VIII fell victim to it. I know we are talking about women's armor, but let's check out his armor. I want you to look south of the border, and what do you see? A codpiece. Yep, dick armor was a thing and lasted for about a century. And no, your dick doesn't actually go into the codpiece, it's a decoration. And guess which is harder to make, a codpiece or boob plate? Yeah, this isn't even an argument. Boob plates are much easier to make. In fact, we have seen something similar in history. That is with the Greeks. They made ab and pec plate armor. Yeah, boob plate armor isn't that hard to make. But I know the next comment, and that is people saying that it would break, that the design would funnel the strike right into the middle of the cleavage. So is that true? Well, let me ask you a couple of questions. This is usually iron and steel armor. How tough is it? I want you to grab a frying pan and take a good look at it. I'm betting you've banged it a few times over the years. Medieval armor is about 1.5 to 5 millimeters thick, and guess how thick a frying pan is? About 2.5 to 5 millimeters, or about the same thickness. Oh, and I've got one last question. What is your frying pan made of? A lot of them are made from softer copper rather than the steel that armor is made of. Now, I'm betting you've seen a video or two of someone striking a piece of plate armor and putting a hole into it. Mostly that is done using a warhammer or halberd, which is designed to puncture plate. So armor is something you can get through, and that promotes the idea which boob plate could break down. But those are anti-armor weapons. Would a regular sword, which isn't designed to puncture armor, do it? Honestly, probably not. And if you have any kind of smart blacksmith, it's that issue. Do you remember when I mentioned that armor could have different thicknesses? Well, any competent blacksmith could make that section a little thicker to prevent it from breaking. Oh, I've got one more suit of armor to look at. Have you seen the Maximilian armor? Do you notice something about it? Look at the waist. This is a wasp waist design. Good luck googling this. You'll mostly find images of women's corsets. It's a rather annoying thing to be sure. Now this style of armor was from the 16th century. I told you there were fashion trends in armor, didn't I? For a period, the masculine trend was to have a very narrow waist, and this armor design reflected that. Now, what is the difference between this kind of armor waist and boob plate armor? Well, I'm going to say that it is the exact same thing. If not, this kind of armor is even more egregious than boob plate armor. And this style lasted for a while, which means it works. If your armor doesn't protect you, it'll be discarded pretty quick. So, by comparing boob plate armor to various armors throughout history, I would say that there shouldn't be any reason that this could not be made, and would not actually work. Yet, there is another type of boob plate armor, and that is the one with exposed cleavage. This tends to be more skin tight and form fitting. These, I'll admit, are low chance of success to be used in battle. But outside of battle is a whole different story. Have you seen the kind of outfits used in ceremonies? They can be elaborate, and some completely impractical. In addition, could be fashion trends in certain regions. On this front, you could justify these more revealing outfits. Here, you can have some fun with the world building. Of course, most of these settings will have magic in them, and that could further augment and make this last group viable. Now the last question. I do want to look at if women in a fantasy world would actually wear these kind of armors. And I'll start with a stupid and direct answer first. If you ever go to a comic or anime convention, you'll see women wearing these very costumes. Of course, they are wearing these outfits since they are cosplaying their favorite characters. They aren't wearing these outfits for function, but for fun. So, would women in a fantasy world really wear boob plate armor? Well, are there any examples of it in the real world? Unfortunately, there aren't a whole lot of examples of female warriors. Yes, we have legends like the Amazons, but they are from myths, and there's very little historic data on them. Sure, we also have warrior women in history, such as Queen Boudica and Joan of Arc. Now, we do have artwork and statues of them, but most of those are made from later dates. Sometimes centuries after the person passed. So we don't have any clear answers. Throughout history, most warriors couldn't afford custom armor, so they used what was available. They try a bunch of pre-made armor from a pile and hope one fit well. And for most of history, women were very rarely heavily invested in war. They would more likely be taking care of the home front and supplying food and tools to the soldiers. But once more, we've got fashion. An area which is dominated by women and is really telling. Just look at high heel shoes. Yes, they were originally designed for men, but in the modern era, that has changed completely. And we've all had a sister, a wife, or some other. They go out in heels, and after an hour, start complaining that their feet hurt. And all I can do is shake my head, since they are the ones who chose to wear those shoes despite knowing that their feet would hurt. And if you voice that thought, what do they say? Oh, they are cute. They go with my purse, and more stuff like that. Yeah, this is a pretty no-brainer. If women think that boob plate armor is pretty or fashionable, I can guarantee that you'll see them in it. And this explanation could even cover the more form-fitting, decorative armors, which show excessive cleavage. Just look at the stuff girls will wear to parties or to go dancing. These would, like I said, these would likely be tied to local fashions. Armor which is worn while in town rather than out adventuring. Yeah, it's likely expensive, but we know how people like to flaunt their wealth. Or again, for ceremonies. But there is one thing which I have not spoken about. And it is the defining trait of fantasy series. And that is the presence of magic, and with them, magic metals. Every series has it. Some sort of magic metal which is stronger than steel but lighter, such as mithril or adamantine. And with these, all of this becomes much easier. Just using better materials is a major concept for many projects. With just better materials or superior craftsmen like dwarves and elves, these become much more likely to work. And that is before we add in magical enchantments. But those will play a bigger role when I do bikini armor. Honestly, I wish I had the money to hire a blacksmith who could make such an armor, that way we could test its viability. Maybe I'll do that someday. So yes, by looking at actual armor throughout history, it would seem that boob plate armor would actually be functional. A clever blacksmith could adjust for any weaknesses it has. And judging off of fashion trends, I wouldn't be surprised for women to wear it. Especially since properly fitted armor offers better protection and safety for adventurers. Thank you for watching, adventurers. Please return next time. Until then, I'll see you on the roads.